All right, so again, what you have a hard copy of and what's on the screen right here, some books will call this a schema. Some books will not. And if you say, I don't know what you mean, you'll understand hopefully better after we have this discussion. I call this more or less a schematic diagram. This is a picture of the database we're going to be working with for the rest of this semester. All right, don't let it overwhelm you or anything else. We're going to be concentrating on some of the stuff that's in there and paying very little attention to other stuff. But what I want you to realize, if you take a look, I'll just use what's up on the screen here as an example. Directly or indirectly, every one of these tables is connected to one another, every one. So for instance, if I wanted to create a report and I wanted a listing of every one of my customers' first names, last names, addresses, and for example, what products they're getting, I could do that by combining the customers table, the orders table, what would it be? Customers and products. I don't know exactly how I'd have to hook them up, but there would be a way there. Yeah, it is. Customers, orders, order details, and products. All I'm trying to tell you is all the information is available. All right. Now, customers, I think that would, because you've actually got this information now too. There's about 25 or 30 customers in here. Employees, there's only about 8. We're not going to do much with employees. Orders, probably close to 1,000. Order details is about 4,000, something like that. I might be a little high on one or the other one. Products, I think we've got about 40 products. Vendors, we got about a dozen. Categories, there's about a half dozen. And like I said, vendors. All right, so you're going to see all this stuff. But the reason that I call this a schematic diagram and the reason some people call this a schema is what it has is it's got the name of every single table that's in here, the name of every single field that's in every table, and the field or fields that represent the primary key for each table. All right. You should be able to look at this right now and note anything that says PK, all right, is a primary key. All right. Now, order details, notice it says there's none that says PK, it says CPK for order details and product vendors. All right. And those tables have a concatenated primary key. That's what the C is for. All right. So each one in here, for example, each order number and product number combination must be unique. All right. And the same kind of thing in here for product vendors. Now, we talked a little bit last time, and you may remember it, you may not. F key means foreign key. All right. And the foreign key, typically what you do is you take the primary key of one table, like category ID, and you put it into another table so you can join those two tables together. This is what we're going to be building towards, is joining tables together. Not only is it not as hard as I might be making it sound, in a way, it's kind of fun. Just because you're like, wow, I can make reports and ask anything I want to of what's in this database. Now, sometimes it's pretty difficult. All right. And I mean, I've given worksheets before where I might want a field or two from here and 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 here. So you've got to join together 7 or 8 tables. So it gets to be pretty ugly as far as the query that you write. But even that said, it's not that terrible. I know that when I was teaching back in Wisconsin, that one of my students got a job for the Department of Natural Resources, and he wrote queries on their database all day long. And if you're going to go and combine eight tables together like this, you're not going to sit down and say, okay, now do this one, now do this one. You're going to try to first combine 2 of them and make sure that everything that you want to do works. Then you add the 3rd one, then you add the 4th one, etc. And, I don't know, a query like that would maybe be 20 lines long, something like that. I asked John, his name's John Sissons, I asked John, with the stuff that you're doing, what's the biggest query you ever wrote? Ever? He said it was 10 pages long. I said, 10 pages? He said, I was going through a database that had almost 1 billion records in it, looking for one or two. And I said, how long did it take you to write that query? He said, you probably don't even want to know. He said, weeks. And he said, I did do what you told us to do. I built it in sections, and it made much more sense. And I documented each section as I was doing it. All right? So this is the schema. You're not going to have to do anything with this. The reason that you've got the hard copy and the reason you might want to keep it handy is as we start going and combining fields together, all right, it might make it a little easier for the work that you're doing. All right. Now I want to show you the other thing that I sent you. So I sent you a folder. You got to unzip it. It's called All. And it's got 9 files in it. I'm going to go through them, not all of them, but one at a time. So here's the first one. This is the real schema right here. So this says we've got what? We've got a table called categories. It's got 2 fields in it, a category ID and a category description. Does that, I guess I just removed that one, but does that look familiar? A category ID and a category description. There's the ID, there's the description. All right. So what it says here when you start taking a look at it is the category ID is an integer. The category ID cannot be null. In other words, you can't leave it blank. The category ID will start with 1, and each time I add a new category, 1 will be added to it. So the second category will be 2, etc. So it'll automatically increment. And it's the primary key. Remember, a primary key is a unique record identifier. So could I have 2 categories? Could I have 2 categories that have the same description? The answer is yes. But I could not have 2 categories that had the same ID. And neither one of these, notice this cannot be null. This can be null. So if you put the word null there, that means that right now I might have a brand new category, but there's nothing in it yet. So I don't have a description. All right, then we've got the customers. And this is the ID for each unique category. This is the ID for each unique customer. Does that make sense? All right. And I'm not going to go back to that picture again, but these were all the fields in that customer table. Now, do you have to preface each one with the word customer, all these with the word category? No. But it makes it much easier to know what table it goes with, calling it customer first name as opposed to first name. All right. So these are all the ones you see highlighted now. These are all of the fields. All right. These are all of the fields for the customers table. So each category has a unique ID and description. Each customer has a unique ID, a first name and a last name, an address, a city, a state, a zip, an area code, and a phone number. All right. Now, I grabbed this from a book that I used to use. So you might say, why did you take that area code and make that an integer? And why did you make the phone number a varchar, which means it's a string? There actually is a reason for that. Because when we put in the area code, we're not putting in parentheses or anything. So 314, those are numbers. However, with the phone number, we're putting the dash in. That's why that one is a varchar. So 286-3675, which is my number here. All right, that's 8 characters. That's why it's set up like that. Notice that all of these can be null. So I can have a brand new customer and I might not even know any of their information yet. So it can be null. So you can fill in that information later, but they will have an ID associated with them. Then we go down to employees, and you'll notice how similar employees is to customers. They look almost the same, except one is prefaced with the word customer and one is prefaced with the word employee. But these are all the people who buy from us. These are all the people who work for us. Is it possible an employee could be a customer? Sure. All right. I mean, it would be like, if I wanted to, could I take a class here at Rankin? Yeah. All right. I often think I should take one because I'm hardware deficient. So I often think I should take one, at night if they ever offered something, who knows. So here's our vendors. You'll notice it like the other ones. Now, what's a little different? Here, each customer and each employee have a first name and a last name. A vendor typically just has a name because it's the company name. But again, address, city, state, zip. Notice we put fax number. And yeah, as funny as it sounds, there are still some places that use faxes. All right, my daughter applied for a job. My daughter who lives in Illinois applied for a job last week, and she needed, we didn't realize it, we have her birth certificate and her social security number here. All right, and she applied for the job and they needed both of those. All right, so my wife was going to send them to her overnight, and she went over to that Going Postal place. They literally wanted $45 to send it. So she hadn't seen my daughter in a while, so she said, hell with it. So they each drove 150 miles, and she met her halfway, and she gave her the information that she wanted. But I told her that what the tie into this is, I said I could have made copies and faxed them to that employer because they had a fax number. I asked her. So she asked them, and they said, no, they need to see that seal that's on there for the birth certificate, and it doesn't usually come through right when you fax it, which I thought was stupid, but it's none of my business. All right. Vendors can have their own web page. Notice it can be null because it's quite possible with a small place they don't even have a web page, right? Could have called it website instead of web page. Products. Each product has a name. Each product has a short and a long description. So a short description, if it's a bicycle, 26-inch Schwinn bicycle, all right, or touring bicycle or something like that. Then a long description where you've got a lot more that you can say in there. And you'll notice that these can each hold up to 255 characters. All right. Then we've got a price. I think we went over this last time, but I want to make sure you understand that. That means the maximum price is the number 9 15 times. 999, 999, 999, 999, 999. But there's a decimal place before the last two digits. I don't know what that is, and I know that's a lot bigger than we need it to be. So if we said the most expensive bike we could have would be, let's just say, right under $1 million. Then we could make it 999,999.99. So we could have made it 8,2. Does that make sense? So that is a number that can have a decimal place. These quantity and category IDs, this category ID that's right here, that one, that is this one. That's a foreign key. We put it into that one so we can join those two tables together directly. All right. And quantity is an integer. In other words, we're assuming you can't buy part of something, whatever it is we're selling here. And I will tell you, because I made my own stuff in here, what it is we're selling bicycles and bicycle accessories. All right. So, to me, it makes no sense to be able to buy half a helmet. All right. So so we've got products. These products are made by, they're in here, so by vendors. All right. But there is no field between these two tables. There is no field in common between products and vendors. So we made our own table that's called product vendors, where we've got the product ID, which is this one. We've got the vendor ID, which is that one. That's our concatenated primary key. And then we've got a wholesale price and a number of days before you can deliver it. All right. And then we've got orders. So each order has its own ID, the date the order was placed, the date the order was shipped, the customer we're shipping it to, and the employee that handled it. Does that all make sense? And finally, we've got this thing called order details. So each order has products that it contains. It's got quoted price and the number that they ordered. You'll notice when you look here, for example, for products, it says primary key here. Everybody see that? And then down here, we don't have that. We don't have any auto increment. And we've got two different fields since it's what's called a concatenated or a combined primary key, you can't list it on a line where you declare it. You've got to list it on its own line down here. The only reason I'm telling you that is it would have been totally legal down here for me to leave this part off, and then on the very bottom down here, so I would have opened up another number and I could have put in primary key, and then I could have said product ID. And if I did that, I'd need to put a comma here, and I could have removed that. Does that make sense to you? All right. To me, it's easier to do it this way. It's less typing, which is why I did it that way. But you'll actually see it done both ways. You'll notice, too, that the file, if you look at it up here, it ends with .sql, structured query language. All right. Our editor, the one I'm using, I'm just using simply Notepad++. I could be using, if I wanted to, I could use VS Code, which is what we usually use, or something else. But it does recognize some keywords in here from an SQL file. What words? Create, table, not, null, primary, key. It doesn't recognize auto increment. All right. And that's just about it. But it recognizes those. Just so you know, in virtually every language that uses, in virtually every relational database management system that uses SQL, they're all case independent. So I could have made all of this in lowercase. I took words that are totally capitalized. Those are typically keywords. That's why I totally capitalized them. Some people would say, you know, you really should have made this lowercase c and you should have made this a lowercase c. Okay, fine. You're right. We could have done that. I didn't. But each one of these is typically what's referred to as its own table or its own entity. So we're telling it this is for the categories table, this is the schema for it. So it will be called categories. So we want to create a table. We want to call it categories. We want it to have these two fields of these two types. Oops. Of those two types. And we want these constraints on it. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to go through all these. Let's just go through one more. Now this is the categories table. You see how simple it is. Because we have literally 6 categories. So our bicycle shop is going to sell accessories, bikes, clothing, components, car racks, and wheels. All right. I put these on 2 different lines. So each one of these is its own accessory. We could have put it all in one line. It doesn't matter. I put it on 2 lines so it didn't go off the page. It's the only reason. All right. I mean, I could make it real small and then show it to you on one page, but I thought it would read better like this. When you put something, now this is before I was declaring the tables. Now I'm putting information into the tables. So I'm saying I want to insert, which is a keyword, into, which is a keyword, the categories table. And notice I didn't put in the ID. That ID, remember, said auto increment. That's automatically put in for me. But I have to go in and put in and let it know the category description will be this. All right. And I'm going to run through just a couple more of these because I want you to see that's the simple one. Customers, it's more complex. Each customer has a first name, a last name, a street, an address. So in other words, first name is Suzanne. Last name is Viscas. Address is 15127 Northeast 24th, number 383. City is Redmond. State is Washington. Zip code is 9805152 or 98052. Area code is 425. Phone number is 5. You get it? So we've got I don't know how many customers there are in here. Like I said, there's 162. I'm going to guess there's about 25, something like that. All right. So that you can see how it's getting bigger. Then the next one are our employees. Now, there's only about 8 employees in here. So The first name is Ann, the last name is Patterson, the address is 16 Maple Lane, city is Auburn, state is Washington, zip code, etc. All right, you see how similar it looks to the employees. How similar the employees looks to the customers, because they have the same, basically the same fields. All right. Then we go into vendors, and I don't think there are very many of them either. All right. 1, 2, somewhere around 8. But each vendor has a name. Each vendor has an address. Each vendor has a city and a state and a zip and a phone number and a fax number, and may or may not have their own web page. All right, and may or may not have their own email address. So this would be whoever my contact was. All right, something like that. Okay. All right. Then we've got products. Now it starts getting a lot bigger. All right. So for each product, it has a name, Aeroflow ATB wheels. It's got a description. We didn't even give one, so we put null in there. We didn't give it a long or a short description. All right. An image. This we're going to have to eventually change, because when we get into where we bring this into C#, you're going to have an image folder, and you're going to have an image for each one of these. All right. And the price is $189. The quantity, we've got 40 in stock, and the category is 4. So the category is 4. What is category 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. So wheels are components. Does that make sense? You start to see the tie-in a little bit. All right. And then we've got the product vendors. All right. And that looks pretty ugly. And notice it's pretty long. Because what we're starting to say is we're combining information from the different tables. All right. I would never have expected you to key in this information. Even if I gave it to you on a piece of paper, that'd be ridiculous. But I'm going to show you how we'll go in and we'll add ourselves as an employee. And we'll add ourselves as a customer or whatever. We'll do that in a little bit. All right. Then we get to orders. And that's even bigger than the last one. I could be wrong. I think there's 944 orders. And I think those 944 orders, I think there's like 3,975 order details with those. So you see how big it's getting. Now, I'm going to show you how to do this, and let me tell you, with what I'm about to show you, there are multiple ways of doing it. I tried doing it in a bunch of ways. The way I'm going to show you worked the best. What I could have done is I could have taken all of these files, all 8 of these files we have here, or 9, I guess, of these files, and combined them into one big humongo file and had us just put it all in at once. I didn't want to do that. So I broke it up as a schema file and each table. All right. The order in which we're putting in those tables, does it matter? It could, it may not, but it shouldn't matter. I've already tried this once and it's worked. I just put them in alphabetic order. All right. In fact, no, I did not. You need to do categories, customers and employees. You need to do vendors and products before you can do product vendors, because it's combining the two. You need to do orders before you can do order details. That's why they're in that order. So what I'd like everybody to do right now, all right, is I'd like you, remember we downloaded that package called XAMPP or XAMPP last time. So I'm going to type in here XAMPP, all right, and I can bring it up that way, or I'm going to just quit. I told you last time, I've got some settings of mine that aren't good here. That if you put it up on your in your taskbar, you can grab it from there too. Now I'm going to have to remove this. All right, so however you want to do that, just bring it up. So I want you to be right here. Everybody cool with that? Yes? All right. Now, what we're about to do isn't hard. After I show you how to do the first one, some of you are going to be like, hell with him, I don't need to listen anymore, I'll just do the rest of them. That's okay. All right, but if you have any problems, then just watch. All right, now you may or may not remember this, but to start this up, we are now going to be using our machine, our computer, as both a client and as a database server. So in order to be able to do that, we need the database on our machine. That's what we're going to do. Those are the files I just showed you. All right, so I want you to click the Start button for Apache, and if it works, it should go from yellow to green, and then click the Start button for MySQL, and it should go to green. If you did that and you had any problems, let me know. All right. Now, I mentioned this to you last time. We're not going to do this. There is a command line interface that you can use with this. So literally, I can click here where it says shell and type in MySQL -u root. And now I'm in. And I could start putting my information in that way. And that'll work fine until we start bringing in the data. And the problem with it is it has a buffer. So it has a size constraint over how many lines you can put in at a time. So when you start to put in that one in there that's got like 944 products, it blows up. It just literally hangs. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want your machine to hang. So I'm just going to type in exit because we don't need that. All right. I need to type in exit again. Now I'm out. What I want you to do is on your line that's got MySQL, don't stop, but right next to where it says stop, click on admin right there. Can everybody see where I am right here? Click on that, and that should bring up the product that's called PHP MyAdmin. Now, PHP is a programming language, okay? And technically, PHP doesn't stand for anything. I've seen it personal hypertext processor and other things. Personal homepage doesn't mean any of those things. I wish we taught PHP here because I thought I'd impress them when I interviewed here 5 years ago and I said, I've got my PHP certification. They were like, well, that's fine. We don't teach that here. So they could really care less. But I like it. I think it's a good language, but it's just not one of the ones they choose to teach here, which is fine. The reason I'm telling you that, though, is you don't need to use PHP in order to be able to do this. All right, this is just a tool that is typically used by PHP. Now, I want to say one more thing, and then we're going to do this. What we are going to be doing today, Friday, and probably next Monday is MySQL. Did you hear me? So we're using a relational database management system called MySQL. I just want you to understand that, okay? When we get into next week and we start writing some of our own apps and we bring the C# stuff back in, I've got this same database that I'll send to you next week. It looks almost the same, but syntactically it's different because it's not written in MySQL SQL. It's written in SQL Server SQL. Now, could we use this MySQL thing in our C programs? The answer is yes, we could. But we got to do more work because here's the surprise. Microsoft makes it easier to work with Microsoft products than it does with non-Microsoft products. I know you're all amazed. All right. But we could do that. But since most of the time when you're working in C#, you'll be using SQL Server, you now get a chance in this class to work with both relational database management systems. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So we have to do one command first, and then we can start doing other stuff. Now, I've already got this database in here, and I called it sales. Notice I've got all that stuff in here. See this? So I'm going to make another one, and I'm going to ask that you use the same names, etc., that I have. So what I want you to do is I want you to click, where can we do this? Let's see, do we do it here? Yeah. All right, so up at the top, just click this hyperlink here that says new. Okay? All right. And it says create database, and it asks you for a name. Everybody see this? Even though technically you can put blank spaces in there, occasionally you've got problems when you write programs and you've got blank spaces in your name. I'm going to ask that you call it sales orders like this with a capital S and a capital O, and you run them together. So in other words, and I'm doing it with you, right here, we're going to type in sales orders. And right here, don't worry about what this means. This is the uniform Unicode transformation format that it's using. We're just going to use the default. All right. So click create. Now before, if you already clicked it, it's okay. But look on the screen here. Would you agree that right now I do not have anything called that you see here called sales orders? Would you agree with that? But I'm clicking create, and now I do. It is totally empty. But what we're going to do is we are going to now import in all 9 of those files that I showed you. Does that make sense to everybody? What we're going to do now is not hard, especially if you just literally take a second or two to listen. All right? So I'm going to click on sales orders right there, and that should make it my active database. So do the same, and then I want you to click here where it says import. All right? I'm not going to read a lick of this to you because basically it says, what do you want to do and where the hell is it? You know where yours is. Hopefully you unzip that folder that I gave you. I'm assuming that you did. So click on choose file. All right, go to where you've got that thing unzipped. So here's mine, all. Open up all, and we're going to do them in order. So just bring in the first one. Click open. Notice it now has the name there. See that? And then go down to the bottom here and click go. And basically it tells you that it's just created it. Take a look on the screen, please. I now have my schema in there for each one of these. Okay? We probably could have put all the files in there at one time and done it. I'm just doing it separately because I know it works. So, as you probably guess, what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to click import again. I'm going to go to choose file. Then I'm going to go to number 1, which is categories. Click open. Go down. Click go. All right. And I'm going to keep doing that for all 8 of those files that remain. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes? No? Questions? All right. So I'm going to do that. Do it yourselves, watch me, and then do it, whatever's easiest for you. But I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, all right? And we'll take a break at 10:15. We'll take another break, all right? And then when we come back, you're going to learn how you can start actually querying this database, all right? Make sure you put them in this order, okay?
Next guy should go to is next door.
He's literally right next door. It's Mr. Corrigan. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And just so you know, we're only doing this once. This is the only time you're ever going to have to do this. Okay? You're going to notice when you do the last couple, notice 944. It's going to take a little bit. And that said, do you know how fast it actually works? It works like that. The reason it's taken so long is it's got to write all that stuff out. It's the I/O, the input-output, that's taken a long time. And if you think this one's taken a while, wait till we get to the next one because there's 3,975. So it'll eventually come back. All right, in fact, it looks like it is back. So here's the other one. I'm gonna try the last one here. I've got all mine in there except for the last one. I'm gonna have you run a quick test, and we'll by about 12 after or so, I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. But I want everybody to run this quick test, okay? What you'll notice, I mean, when I did this at home, it went like that. It was because I was on my Wi-Fi and I was the only one on at the time. But if we're doing stuff, we got an advantage because none of his people are in there, so none of them are sucking off the internet or anything else. So, anybody have any problems with that? Everybody get it to work. All right. So, okay, just to show you what I'd like you to do right now, you're going to type in the same command 8 times, once for each table. If you look up on the screen here, I want you to click in the box or the thing that says SQL. That brings up what's called your SQL window. And I want you to type in select star from categories. And you're going to do it for each table that's in here. So after we're going to run this, then we're going to come back. Then you're going to do it for customers, then employees, etc. Does that make sense? So select star from categories. Whoops, I can make it bigger. Hopefully that's big enough. Then go down to here and click on the Go button. Oh, what didn't it like? Good golly. Sales orders dot cat. Oh, because you got to spell categories right. That would probably help. Okay. Categories. There we go. Go. All right. There's my categories. See that? So I want you to make sure you don't have to go through all 944 orders and all 3975, etc. But then when you come back up here and you click Show Query Box in here, now you can just get rid of categories and put in customers. Run it again. And you'll notice it says now I've got 27 customers. It only shows 24 at a time, just so you know. All right. So I'm going to come back up again, click Show Query Box. And the next one is employees. I think there's 8 employees. There they are. Show it again. And all we're doing is just verifying that indeed all the copies took place. So order details. That one again is pretty big. So notice 3,975. Orders, I think that was 944 yep, 944. Products, there's 40. Product vendors, oops, I don't want that. I want to go back in here. Where's my box? Product vendors, it says that there's 90. And then finally, whoops, I don't know why I keep doing that. Vendors. I can run it like that, that's fine. And we've got, looks like 10 vendors. Now, if I make this nice and small, I can see just about everything for each vendor. You see that? I don't know if there is actually a way that you can, let's see, that there's a way that you can take these, the edit, the copy, and the delete and actually minimize them. I've never tried to. So you're going to have to kind of peruse your way around. Does that make sense to everybody? So after the break, I'm taking, because no one said anything, that you understood what I told you to do and you did it. We're going to come in, we're going to look at the schema, and then we're going to write a bunch of queries together just so you can see how you can start using this stuff. We'll start baby steps, and we'll actually do something fairly significant by the end of the class then. All right? So it's 10:13. Let's make it nice and long and come back at 10:30, please.